The sharp crack of gunfire echoed through the night as Zara Novak ducked behind the weathered fence post, her heart pounding in rhythm with the distant thunder. Montana Territory, 1885, was no place for a woman alone, especially not one with her particular circumstance. Rain began to fall, pattering against the dusty earth as Zara pressed a protective hand against her still flat stomach. 5 weeks since she'd discovered her condition, 3 days since she'd fled the boarding house in Helena where she'd worked as a seamstress. The father of her child, a traveling businessman who'd promised marriage before disappearing with the morning stage, was long gone, leaving her to face ruin alone. Lightning illuminated the sprawling ranch ahead, the massive barn a looming silhouette against the stormy sky. She'd seen no lamps lit in the main house as she'd approached, giving her hope that she might find shelter undetected. Just one night, she told herself. One night to rest before continuing her journey to her cousin's home in Oregon. The rain intensified, soaking through her woolen cloak. Zara forced herself forward, splashing through puddles forming in the yard. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy barn door just enough to slip inside. The warm, earthy scent of hay and horses enveloped her as she closed the door against the storm. In the darkness, she could make out the shapes of several horses shifting in their stalls, their ears pricking forward at the intrusion. "I won't be any trouble," she whispered to them, making her way deeper into the barn. Finding a secluded corner stacked with fresh hay, she collapsed, exhaustion overwhelming her. She hadn't eaten since morning, and her stomach cramped with hunger, but the fear of being discovered kept her from seeking out the main house. Zara burrowed into the hay, pulling her damp cloak around her. The child within her was her secret shame, but also her greatest treasure. She placed her hand over her abdomen, whispering a prayer for their future before exhaustion claimed her. She woke to sunlight streaming through cracks in the barn walls. For a moment, she lay still, orienting herself. The events of the previous night came rushing back, and she sat up, hay clinging to her hair and clothes. The barn was quiet except for the occasional snort or hoof stomp from the horses. Zara brushed hay from her skirts and attempted to smooth her tangled hair. She needed to leave before anyone discovered her presence. As she gathered her meager belongings, her stomach growled painfully. Perhaps she could find some water before continuing on her way. As she moved toward the door, a sudden wave of dizziness overcame her. She reached out to steady herself against a support beam, but her vision darkened around the edges. Her knees buckled beneath her, strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Whoa there," a deep voice said, steadying her. "Easy now." Zara's eyes flew open to meet a pair of concerned blue ones. A man held her upright, his expression a mixture of surprise and wariness. He was tall, with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin. A cowboy, judging by his worn leather chaps and dusty hat. "I'm sorry," she stammered, trying to pull away. "I didn't mean to trespass. I was caught in the storm last night and you look half-starved," he interrupted, his gaze moving over her pale face. "When's the last time you ate something?" she hesitated, unwilling to admit her desperate circumstances. "Yesterday morning." The man nodded, his expression unreadable. "Name's Ethan Andrews. This is my ranch." "Zara Novak," she replied automatically, then winced at giving her real name. "I'll be on my way. I didn't mean to intrude." "In your condition?" he asked quietly. Zara froze, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "I don't know what you mean." Ethan's eyes followed the movement of her hand, and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I already knew," her heart stopped. "Knew what? That you're expecting." He released her arm, stepping back to give her space. "My sister-in-law had the same look about her, the same way of holding herself, protecting what's precious." Tears sprang to Zara's eyes. She blinked them back furiously, refusing to show weakness. "It's not what you think." "I'm not thinking anything, Miss Novak," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "Except that you need food and rest. Come up to the house. My housekeeper, Mrs. Whitaker, will fix you something to eat." "I can't," Zara insisted. "I need to keep moving." "To where?" When she didn't answer, Ethan sighed. "At least stay for breakfast. You can't travel in your condition without proper food. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Zara had been running for days, terrified of judgment, of scorn, of being turned away. This stranger's compassion was unexpected. "Just breakfast," she agreed reluctantly. "Then I'll be on my way." Ethan nodded, gesturing toward the barn door. "The house is just up the path." Outside, the morning was bright and clear, all evidence of last night's storm washed away except for puddles reflecting the blue sky. The ranch spread out around them, acres of grassland bordered by distant mountains. The main house was larger than it had appeared in the darkness, a two-story structure with a wide porch wrapping around the front. As they approached, an older woman appeared in the doorway, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She raised her eyebrows at the sight of Zara. "Mrs. Whitaker," Ethan called. "This is Miss Novak. She'll be joining us for breakfast." The housekeeper's expression softened as she took in Zara's bedraggled appearance. "Come in, dear. You look like you could use a hot meal and a cup of coffee." The warmth of the kitchen embraced Zara as she stepped inside. The smell of biscuits and bacon made her mouth water, reminding her just how hungry she was. Mrs. Whitaker guided her to a chair at the table, then bustled about, filling a plate with more food than Zara had seen in days. "Eat up now," the older woman encouraged, placing the plate before her. "You're far too thin." Ethan remained standing, leaning against the doorframe as he watched Zara pick up her fork with trembling fingers. Mrs. Whitaker, Miss Novak might also appreciate a bath and some fresh clothes after breakfast. Zara looked up sharply. "That's not necessary." "I told you I'll be moving on after I eat." "To where?" Ethan asked again, more firmly this time. "It's 30 miles to the nearest town. You've no horse that I can see, and you're in no condition to walk that distance." "I'll find a way," Zara insisted, though she knew her options were limited. Mrs. Whitaker clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "Nonsense. No woman in your condition should be wandering about with no destination. You'll stay here until you're properly rested." Zara felt trapped, though the trap was cushioned with kindness. "I can't impose, it's no imposition," Ethan interrupted. "We have plenty of room and Mrs. Whitaker would welcome the company." "Indeed I would," the housekeeper agreed. "It's just Mr. Andrews and the ranch hands here most days. A woman's presence would be a pleasant change." Zara hesitated, weighing her limited options. She had little money, no transportation, and nowhere to go except a cousin in Oregon who might not welcome her once she learned of the baby. The offer of shelter, even temporarily, was tempting. "Perhaps, just for a day or two," she conceded. "Until I can make proper arrangements." Ethan nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Mrs. Whitaker will show you to a guest room after you've eaten. I have work to attend to." He tipped his hat slightly before turning to leave. "Mr. Andrews," Zara called after him. He paused, looking back. "Thank you." Something flickered in his eyes, compassion, perhaps, or understanding. "Everyone deserves kindness, Miss Novak, even those carrying secrets." After he left, Mrs. Whitaker refilled Zara's coffee cup. "He's a good man, Mr. Andrews. Lost his brother and sister-in-law to influenza 2 years back. Been running the ranch alone ever since." "He lives here by himself?" Zara asked, surprised. "With me to keep house and 6 ranch hands who bunk in the bunkhouse out back," Mrs. Whitaker explained. "His brother's death hit him hard." Thomas Andrews was the older brother, the one who inherited the ranch from their father. Ethan worked alongside him but never expected to be the one in charge. Zara nodded, understanding loss all too well. Her own parents had died within a year of each other when she was 16, leaving her to make her own way in the world. After breakfast, Mrs. Whitaker showed her to a guest room on the 2nd floor. It was simple but comfortable, with a brass bed, a washstand, and a small wardrobe. "I'll bring up some hot water for your bath," the housekeeper said, "and I'll see if I can find some suitable clothes. You look to be about the same size as Thomas's wife was." "Oh, I couldn't," Zara began. "Catherine would have wanted her things to be used," Mrs. Whitaker said firmly. "No sense in them sitting in trunks gathering dust. Besides, you'll need loose-fitting dresses in the months ahead." The directness of the comment made Zara flush. "Is it that obvious?" Mrs. Whittaker's eyes softened. "Only to another woman who's seen it before. Don't worry, I'm not one to judge." Life is hard enough for women out here without adding the burden of scorn. When the housekeeper left to fetch the bath water, Zara sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the turn of events. She had expected to be driven away if discovered, not welcomed and cared for. Part of her warned that she shouldn't accept such charity, that there must be a price to pay later. But her exhaustion and the needs of her unborn child overrode her caution. Later, dressed in a simple blue calico that had belonged to Catherine Andrews, Zara felt renewed. The dress was loose around her waist, allowing room for her changing body. Mrs. Whittaker had helped her wash and braid her long brown hair, tusking over its tangled state. "There now," the housekeeper said approvingly. "You look quite presentable. Come downstairs when you're ready. I could use some help with dinner preparations if you're feeling up to it." Eager to repay some of the kindness shown to her, Zara followed Mrs. Whittaker to the kitchen. The afternoon passed quickly as she helped chop vegetables, knead bread dough, and learn the layout of the large kitchen. The work was soothing, reminding her of happier days helping her mother prepare family meals. As evening approached, the sounds of men's voices and boot steps on the porch signaled the return of Ethan and his ranch hands. Zara tensed, uncertain how she would be received by the others. Ethan entered first, removing his hat as he stepped into the kitchen. He stopped short at the sight of Zara, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her transformed appearance. "Miss Novak," he said, nodding politely, "I trust you're feeling better." "Yes, thank you," she replied, self-consciously smoothing the unfamiliar dress. "Mrs. Whittaker has been very kind." The ranch hands filed in behind him, 5 men of varying ages who regarded Zara with curious but respectful glances. Ethan introduced them briefly: Samuel, the foreman, brothers Jack and Henry, Miguel, and an older man everyone called Doc, though he had no medical training. "Miss Novak will be staying with us for a few days," Ethan informed them. "I expect you all to show her proper respect." The men nodded, murmuring greetings before taking their seats at the large table. Zara helped Mrs. Whittaker serve the hearty meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie. The conversation flowed easily around her, the men discussing cattle, weather, and plans for the upcoming spring cattle drive. As they ate, Zara found herself studying Ethan Andrews. In the light of the oil lamps, she could see that he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so. His face was weathered from years of outdoor work, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. His hands were calloused, his shoulders broad from physical labor, but there was a gentleness to his manner that belied his rugged appearance. She realized he was watching her too, his blue eyes thoughtful. When their gazes met, he didn't look away. "Where are you from originally, Miss Novak?" he asked. "Ohio," she answered. "My parents had a small farm there." "That's a long way from Montana territory," Samuel the foreman commented. "What brought you out here?" Zara hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "After my parents died, I worked as a seamstress. I thought there might be better opportunities out west." "She's heading to Oregon," Ethan added, saving her from further explanation, "to stay with family." The men nodded, accepting this without question. As dinner concluded, they thanked Mrs. Whittaker for the meal and filtered out to the bunkhouse, leaving Zara alone with Ethan and the housekeeper. "You should rest, Miss Novak," Mrs. Whittaker suggested, beginning to clear the table. "Your body needs it. Let me help with the dishes first," Zara insisted. "I'll assist Mrs. Whittaker," Ethan said. "You go on up. There are books in the study if you'd like something to read before bed." Surprised by the offer, Zara thanked him and made her way to the study before heading upstairs. The small room was lined with bookshelves, a testament to a family that valued reading. She selected a volume of poetry and took it up to her room. That night, lying in the comfortable bed with the book open beside her, Zara allowed herself to acknowledge the strange turn her life had taken. Just 24 hours ago, she'd been hungry, frightened, and alone. Now she was clean, fed, and safe at least temporarily. The question remained, what would happen when it was time to move on? She placed a hand over her stomach. "We'll figure it out," she whispered to her unborn child. "Somehow we'll make a life for ourselves." With that thought, she drifted into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in weeks. Morning brought the sounds of ranch life: roosters crowing, horses nickering, men calling to one another as they began their day's work. Zara dressed quickly and made her way downstairs, eager to help with breakfast preparations. To her surprise, Ethan was already in the kitchen, coffee cup in hand as he stood at the window, gazing out at the ranch yard. "Good morning," she said hesitantly. He turned, a slight smile warming his features. "Good morning, Miss Novak. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in quite some time," she admitted. "Thank you again for your hospitality." He waved away her thanks. "Mrs. Whittaker left biscuits warming in the oven. She's gone to gather eggs." Zara moved to the stove, finding a pot of oatmeal simmering. She stirred it, comfortable in the domestic task. "You have a beautiful home, Mr. Andrews." "Ethan, please," he said, coming to stand beside her. "And it was my brother's vision, not mine. Thomas always wanted to build something that would last, something to pass down to his children." A shadow crossed his face. He and Catherine lost their first baby at birth, and then the influenza took them before they could try again. "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. "Mrs. Whittaker mentioned you lost them 2 years ago." He nodded, his eyes distant. "Thomas was larger than life, loud, confident, always knew exactly what he wanted. I was content to follow his lead. When he died, I nearly sold the place, couldn't imagine running it without him." "What changed your mind?" Ethan's gaze returned to her face. "I realized it was his legacy. The thing he loved most in the world besides Catherine. I couldn't let it go to strangers." Something in his voice, the quiet determination, the loyalty to his brother's memory, touched Zara deeply. Before she could respond, Mrs. Whittaker bustled in with a basket of eggs. "Oh good, you're both up," the housekeeper said. "The men will be in shortly for breakfast." The morning meal was a lively affair, with the ranch hands discussing the day's work, mending fences, checking on pregnant heifers, breaking a new horse. Zara found herself drawn into their camaraderie, laughing at their good-natured teasing of one another. After the men departed, she insisted on helping Mrs. Whittaker with the household chores. They spent the morning washing laundry, hanging sheets and shirts on the line to dry in the spring breeze. As they worked, the older woman shared stories of the ranch and its inhabitants. "Ethan's a fine man," Mrs. Whittaker remarked as they pinned up a sheet. "Never heard him raise his voice, not even when one of the hands made a costly mistake. Patient, that's what he is." "He seems kind," Zara agreed. "Kind, yes, but lonely. Keeps to himself mostly." Thomas was the social one, always inviting neighbors over, hosting dances during the holidays. "Ethan's let all that go." The housekeeper sighed. "This place needs a woman's touch, if you ask me. Children running about." Zara felt her cheeks warm at the implied suggestion. "I'm only passing through, Mrs. Whittaker." The older woman gave her a knowing look. "We'll see about that. Sometimes the good Lord puts us exactly where we need to be, even if it's not where we thought we were headed." Later that afternoon, as Zara sat on the porch mending one of Ethan's shirts that Mrs. Whittaker had given her, she spotted a rider approaching. As the figure drew closer, she recognized Ethan, returning early from his work on the range. He dismounted at the hitching post, removing his hat and wiping his brow before looking up and noticing her. He smiled, raising a hand in greeting as he approached. "Putting you to work already, I see," he commented, nodding at the shirt in her lap. "I wanted to help," she replied. "Mrs. Whittaker mentioned you were short a button. That's kind of you." He settled into the chair beside her, stretching his long legs out. "How are you feeling today?" "Well," she said, though in truth she'd battled nausea that morning, a reminder of her condition. "Your ranch is beautiful." 10,000 acres, he said, pride evident in his voice. "My father started with just 500. Thomas expanded it after he took over. We run about 2,000 head of cattle now." "It's impressive," Zara said sincerely. "You must be very proud." "Some days," he admitted. "Other days it feels like more responsibility than I ever wanted." He glanced at her, his expression turning serious. "May I ask you something personal, Miss Novak?" She tensed, her fingers stilling on the shirt. "You may ask. The father of your child, where is he?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "Gone," she said simply. "He was passing through Helena where I worked. He made promises he never intended to keep." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And when he learned about the baby, he didn't," Zara admitted. "He left before I knew myself. By the time I realized, he was long gone." "And you're heading to Oregon to family?" "My cousin lives there. I'm hoping she'll take me in, at least until the baby comes." Zara didn't mention that her relationship with her cousin was distant at best, and that she had no idea how the woman would react to her arrival. Ethan was quiet for a moment, studying the horizon. "It's a difficult journey, especially for a woman in your condition. The stagecoach is rough and there are dangers along the way." "I don't have many options," Zara said softly. "You could stay here," he suggested, his voice casual though his eyes were intent. "At least until after the baby is born. We have the room and Mrs. Whittaker would welcome the company." Zara stared at him, unable to hide her shock. "Stay here? But why would you offer such a thing to a stranger?" "You're not exactly a stranger anymore," he pointed out. "And as I said, Mrs. Whittaker would appreciate another woman around. The ranch hands would respect your privacy. You'd be safe here and your child would be born somewhere stable." The offer was tempting more than tempting. The ranch was peaceful, comfortable, and she already felt at ease with Mrs. Whittaker. But accepting such charity from a man she barely knew seemed foolish, even dangerous. "That's very generous," she said carefully, "but I couldn't impose on you that way." "What would people say?" "People will always talk," Ethan replied with a shrug. "I stopped caring what they think when they started whispering that I couldn't manage the ranch after Thomas died." "And did you?" "Manage it, I mean." A small smile lifted the corner of his mouth. "We had the best cattle prices at market last fall. The Andrews Ranch is doing just fine." His quiet confidence impressed her. Here was a man who had faced doubt and loss but persevered through hard work and determination. "Think about it," he said, rising from his chair. "There's no rush to decide. You're welcome here as long as you need." As he walked away, Zara found herself watching his retreating figure, wondering at the unexpected kindness of this solitary cowboy who had found her hiding in his barn. Over the next several days, Zara fell into the rhythm of ranch life. She helped Mrs. Whittaker with the cooking and cleaning, mended clothes for the ranch hands, and even discovered a small vegetable garden behind the house that needed attention. The physical work was good for her, keeping her mind occupied and her body strong despite the occasional bouts of morning sickness. Ethan didn't mention his offer again, giving her space to consider it. But she often caught him watching her, his expression thoughtful. Each evening at dinner, he made a point to ask about her day, listening attentively to her responses. Sometimes, after the ranch hands had retired to the bunkhouse, they would sit on the porch together, talking as darkness fell over the Montana landscape. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor beneath his quiet exterior, that he loved poetry but was embarrassed to admit it, that he had never wanted to be anything but a rancher, working alongside his brother on the land they both loved. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Ohio, about her dreams of one day owning a small dress shop, about the loneliness she'd felt since her parents' deaths. She didn't speak of the baby's father again, and Ethan didn't ask. A week passed, then two. Zara knew she should make plans to continue to Oregon, but each day she found another reason to delay. The truth was, she felt safe at the Andrews Ranch in a way she hadn't felt in years. Mrs. Whittaker treated her like a daughter. The ranch hands respected her. And Ethan's steady presence was becoming something she looked forward to each day. One afternoon, as she hung laundry on the line, she heard a wagon approaching. A middle-aged woman and a younger one sat on the bench, the older woman handling the reins with confident ease. They pulled up near the house, and the younger woman waved when she spotted Zara. "Hello there," she called. "Is Ethan around?" Zara approached the wagon, wiping her hands on her apron. "He's out checking the north pasture. Can I help you?" The older woman studied her with open curiosity. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Margaret Wilson, and this is my daughter, Clara. We're neighbors about 5 miles east." "Zara Novak," she replied, suddenly aware of how it must look her presence on the ranch, doing domestic chores as if she belonged there. Clara Wilson, a pretty blonde woman about Zara's age, smiled warmly. "Are you visiting the Andrews Ranch?" "We haven't seen many visitors since poor Catherine passed." "I'm staying for a while," Zara said carefully, "helping Mrs. Whittaker with the household duties." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "I see. Well, we've brought some preserves for Ethan. Clara made them specially." Clara blushed. "It's just blackberry jam. I know it's his favorite." Something uncomfortable twisted in Zara's stomach at the younger woman's obvious interest in Ethan. Of course there would be eligible young women in the area. A man like Ethan Andrews, handsome, successful, kind, wouldn't remain unmarried forever. "That's very thoughtful," Zara said, reaching for the jar Clara held out. "I'll make sure he gets it." "We were hoping to see him," Margaret said, her tone suggesting more than a casual visit. "Perhaps we could wait." Before Zara could respond, Mrs. Whittaker emerged from the house. "Margaret Wilson, is that you? Come in for some coffee. Ethan should be back within the hour." The two women climbed down from the wagon and followed Mrs. Whittaker inside, Clara casting curious glances back at Zara. Left alone, Zara returned to the laundry, trying to ignore the unsettled feeling the visitors had stirred in her. She had no claim on Ethan Andrews, she reminded herself. His kindness toward her was just that kindness, perhaps mixed with a sense of duty. The fact that she found herself thinking of him more and more often, noticing the way the sun brought out golden highlights in his brown hair, or how his rare smile transformed his serious face, was a problem she would have to overcome. When Ethan returned, she watched from the window as he greeted the Wilson women. Clara moved close to him, touching his arm as she spoke, her pretty face animated. Zara turned away, focusing on the bread dough she was kneading with unnecessary force. The Wilsons stayed for dinner, Margaret dominating the conversation with local gossip while Clara directed most of her attention to Ethan. Zara remained quiet, aware of the calculating looks Margaret occasionally sent her way. As they prepared to leave, Margaret addressed Ethan directly. "We're having a small gathering at our place Saturday next. Nothing formal, just neighbors getting together for some music and dancing. You should come, Ethan. It's been too long since you've socialized." "I appreciate the invitation, Mrs. Wilson," Ethan said politely, "but I have a lot of work here." "Nonsense," Margaret insisted. "Even ranchers need recreation. Clara specifically asked that you come, didn't you, dear?" Clara blushed prettily. "We'd love to have you, Ethan." "All of you," she added, glancing at Zara with less enthusiasm. After they left, an awkward silence fell in the kitchen as Mrs. Whittaker cleared away the dinner dishes. Zara began to help, avoiding Ethan's gaze. "Clara Wilson seems very interested in you," she finally said, aiming for a casual tone. Ethan made a non-committal sound. "Margaret's been trying to match us up for years. Ever since Catherine died, she's had Clara bringing jams and pies over." "She's very pretty," Zara observed, hating the jealousy that colored her words. "Yes," Ethan agreed, "and about as interesting as watching paint dry. All she talks about is dresses and social calls." Mrs. Whittaker chuckled. "Be kind, Ethan. The girl is just trying to catch herself a husband." "Then she's fishing in the wrong pond," he replied firmly. "I have no interest in marrying Clara Wilson or anyone else who sees me as nothing more than a prosperous ranch and a comfortable house." His eyes met Zara's across the kitchen, something unspoken passing between them. She looked away first, her cheeks warming. That night, unable to sleep, Zara sat by her bedroom window, gazing out at the star-filled Montana sky. Her hand rested on her stomach, which had just begun to show the slightest curve. Soon her condition would be obvious to everyone, including visitors like the Wilsons. The thought of the gossip that would follow made her stomach clench. Perhaps it was time to move on, to continue to Oregon as she'd planned. The longer she stayed, the harder it would be to leave and the more attached she became to this place and its people. Especially Ethan with his quiet strength and unexpected kindness. A soft knock at her door startled her. "Zara, are you awake?" Ethan's voice was low, mindful of Mrs. Whittaker sleeping down the hall. She hesitated, then crossed to open the door. Ethan stood in the hallway, still fully dressed despite the late hour. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No," he said. "I saw your lamp was still lit. May I speak with you for a moment?" she nodded, stepping back to allow him into her room. The impropriety of it struck her, but somehow seemed unimportant compared to the serious expression on his face. "I've been thinking about your situation," Ethan said, remaining near the door, "about your plans to go to Oregon." "Yes," she replied. "I should be making arrangements soon." "Do you want to go?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "I don't have many options." "That's not what I asked," he persisted. "Do you want to leave here?" Zara looked away, unable to face the intensity in his eyes. "No," she admitted softly. "But I can't stay indefinitely, living on your charity." "What if it wasn't charity?" Ethan took a step closer. "What if there was another arrangement?" Her heart began to pound. "What kind of arrangement?" "Marriage," he said simply. Zara stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I don't understand. I'm proposing marriage, Zara." His voice was steady, though she detected a hint of nervousness beneath the confidence. "A real marriage, not just one of convenience." "But why? You barely know me." "I know enough," he countered. "I know you're brave, facing your situation alone. I know you're kind. I've seen how you treat Mrs. Whittaker and the ranch hands. I know you're intelligent and hardworking." He paused. "And I know that in the 3 weeks you've been here, I've thought about you constantly." Zara's breath caught. "Ethan, I'm carrying another man's child, I'm aware." His expression softened. "That child would be mine in every way that matters. I'd raise it as my own, give it my name. People would talk," she whispered. "Let them." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Zara, I've been alone since Thomas and Catherine died. I threw myself into the ranch, into work, because it was easier than facing the emptiness they left behind. Then you appeared in my barn, and suddenly the house felt alive again." Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. "I don't want your pity." "This isn't pity," Ethan insisted. "It may have started as a desire to help you, but it's become something more. I admire you, I enjoy your company, I find myself looking for reasons to be near you." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I'm not offering a marriage of convenience. I'm offering a partnership, a chance for both of us to build something together." Zara searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or deception. She found only sincerity in his blue eyes and something else, hope, perhaps, or the beginning of something deeper. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't have to answer now," he told her. "Think about it. Talk to Mrs. Whittaker if you like. She'll give you an honest assessment of what life with me would be like." His mouth quirked in a small smile. "I'm not perfect, Zara. I work too hard, I'm stubborn, and I'm not much for socializing, but I'd be faithful to you and I'd do everything in my power to make you and your child happy." He released her hands and stepped back. "Good night, Zara. I'll be in town tomorrow on business. We can talk more when I return." After he left, Zara sank onto the edge of her bed, overwhelmed. Marriage to Ethan Andrews. It seemed impossible, like something from a dream. Yet he had seemed entirely serious, his proposal straightforward and honest. Could she accept such an offer? She barely knew him, despite the connection she felt growing between them. And while she was undeniably attracted to him, was that enough basis for a marriage? She thought of her alternatives: the uncertain journey to Oregon, the possible rejection by her cousin, the difficulty of building a life alone with a child to support. Compared to those prospects, Ethan's offer was tempting indeed. A home, security, respectability for her child, and a husband who, if not in love with her, at least seemed to genuinely care for her welfare. Sleep eluded her that night as she weighed her options. By morning, she was no closer to a decision, Mrs. Whittaker noticed her distraction as they prepared breakfast. "Something troubling you, dear?" Zara hesitated, then decided to confide in the older woman. "Ethan asked me to marry him last night." The housekeeper's eyebrows rose, but she didn't seem entirely surprised. "Did he now?" "And what did you say?" "That I needed to think about it." Zara cracked an egg into a bowl with more force than necessary. "It doesn't make sense. He barely knows me." "Sometimes the heart knows what it wants before the head catches up," Mrs. Whittaker said sagely. "Ethan's not one to make decisions lightly. If he's asked you to marry him, he's given it serious thought." "But why me? I'm carrying another man's child. I have nothing to offer him. You underestimate yourself." The housekeeper touched Zara's arm gently. "I've watched Ethan these past weeks. He smiles more when you're around. He comes in from the fields earlier. He's starting to live again, not just exist." "That's not enough reason to marry someone," Zara argued. "Perhaps not," Mrs. Whittaker conceded, "but it's a start. Love can grow from smaller beginnings." Love. The word hung in the air between them. Was that what Ethan was offering? Not just security and respectability, but the possibility of love. "I don't know what to do," Zara admitted. "Follow your heart, dear. It usually knows the way, even when our heads are confused." With Ethan away for the day, Zara had time to consider his proposal. She walked the grounds of the ranch, thinking about what life as Mrs. Andrews might be like. The house was beautiful, the land prosperous. Her child would grow up with space to run and play with animals and nature surrounding them. And Ethan himself, steady, reliable, kind, would make a good father, but what kind of husband would he be? They had shared conversations, meals, brief moments of connection, but nothing more intimate. The thought of sharing his bed both frightened and intrigued her. Would he expect a true marriage in all senses of the word, or would this be merely a practical arrangement? By evening, when she heard the sound of hoofbeats signaling Ethan's return, Zara still hadn't reached a decision. She watched from the kitchen window as he dismounted, handing his horse off to one of the ranch hands. He looked tired, his shoulders slightly slumped as he removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair. Dinner that night was a quiet affair. Mrs. Whittaker carried most of the conversation, updating Ethan on ranch matters and commenting on the weather. Zara remained largely silent, aware of his occasional glances in her direction. After the meal, Mrs. Whittaker made a transparent excuse to retire early, leaving Zara and Ethan alone in the kitchen. For a moment, neither spoke. "Would you like to walk outside?" Ethan finally asked. "It's a beautiful evening." Zara nodded, grateful for the suggestion. The kitchen suddenly seemed too small, too intimate for the conversation they needed to have. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. They walked toward the corral where several horses moved about in the twilight. The air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of grass and distant wildflowers. "I've thought about your proposal," Zara said when they reached the fence. "I'm grateful for the offer, truly." "But," Ethan prompted, sensing her hesitation, "but I'm concerned about your reasons," she admitted. "I don't want you to marry me out of pity or a sense of obligation." "I told you last night it's not pity." His voice was firm. "Yes, I want to help you, but that's not my only motivation." "What is then?" Zara turned to face him. "Be honest with me, Ethan. What do you really want?" He was quiet for a moment, considering her question. "Companionship," he finally said. "Someone to share this life with, someone who understands that this ranch isn't just land and cattle, it's a legacy, a responsibility." He met her gaze directly. "And yes, a family. Children to pass it on to someday." "Including my child?" she asked softly. "Especially your child," he assured her. "I meant what I said. Any child of yours would be mine in all the ways that matter." The sincerity in his voice moved her deeply. "And what about between us?" she asked, her cheeks warming. "What do you expect from me as a wife?" Ethan seemed to understand her meaning immediately. "I would never force anything, Zara. We could start as friends, partners. If more develops between us, we'll face that when it comes." His consideration touched her. Most men would have assumed their rights as a husband without discussion. "I do care for you," he continued. "I'm attracted to you, but I would never ask more of you than you're willing to give." Zara studied his face in the fading light, seeing the honesty written there. This man who had found her hiding in his barn with her shameful secret was offering her a chance at a new life. Not just shelter and security, but respect and the possibility of something deeper. "Yes," she said simply. Ethan blinked. Yes, I'll marry you." A tentative smile curved her lips. "I can't promise what kind of wife I'll be, but I'll do my best to be a good partner to you, to help with the ranch, to make this house a home." The joy that transformed Ethan's face took her breath away. In that moment, she knew she had made the right decision. "When?" he asked, taking her hands in his. "Soon," she replied. "Before my condition becomes too obvious," he nodded, understanding her concern. 2 weeks. That would give us time to make arrangements, to let people know." 2 weeks, she agreed. They stood together by the corral, hands linked, as darkness settled fully over the ranch. The future that had seemed so uncertain to Zara just weeks ago now stretched before her, still unknown but no longer frightening. News of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch and to neighboring properties. Mrs. Whitaker was openly delighted, immediately beginning preparations for a small wedding ceremony to be held at the ranch. The ranch hands offered congratulations, seemingly unsurprised by the development. Not everyone's reaction was positive, however. 3 days after Ethan's proposal, Margaret and Clara Wilson arrived unannounced, ostensibly to deliver a pie but clearly intent on confirming the rumors they'd heard. "Engaged," Margaret repeated after Ethan informed them. "But you've only known each other a few weeks." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Ethan replied calmly, his hand resting supportively on Zara's back. Clara's face had gone pale. We all thought you were just helping her out temporarily." "It started that way," Zara admitted. "But we discovered we suit each other well." Margaret's shrewd eyes narrowed as they moved over Zara's figure, lingering briefly on her midsection. Though Zara had been careful to choose dresses that disguised her condition, the older woman's suspicious gaze made her fear her secret was already guessed. "Well," Margaret said after a moment, "I suppose congratulations are in order, though it does seem rather hasty." After the Wilsons departed, Zara expressed her concerns to Ethan. "Margaret suspects, I think, about the baby." "Probably," he agreed. "She's always had a nose for gossip, but it doesn't matter. Once we're married, no one will dare say anything to your face, and behind our backs." Ethan's expression hardened slightly. "Let them talk. We know the truth, that this child will be raised with love in a proper home. That's all that matters." His certainty reassured her, as did his unfailing support in the days that followed. As they prepared for their wedding, Ethan included Zara in decisions about the ranch, seeking her opinion on matters large and small. He showed her the account books, explained his plans for expanding the herd, and introduced her to the intricacies of ranch management. For her part, Zara threw herself into learning everything she could about running the household. Mrs. Whitaker was a patient teacher, showing her how to manage the pantry, which vendors in town were reliable, how to plan meals for the ranch hands during busy seasons. At night, they continued their habit of sitting on the porch, talking until the stars filled the sky. Zara learned about Ethan's childhood, about his close relationship with his brother, about his dreams for the ranch's future. In turn, she shared more of herself, her love of books, her skill with a needle, her hopes for her child. Sometimes their conversations lapsed into comfortable silence, both content to simply be in each other's presence. Occasionally, Ethan would reach for her hand, his fingers entwining with hers in a gesture that felt increasingly natural. The physical attraction between them grew as well. Zara found herself noticing the breadth of his shoulders, the strength in his hands, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. More than once, she caught him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch, yet he maintained the respectful distance he had promised, never pushing for more intimacy than she was ready to give. His restraint only increased her growing feelings for him. 2 days before the wedding, Reverend Parker arrived from the nearest town to meet with them. A kind-faced man in his 50s, he sat with them in the parlor, discussing the ceremony and asking gentle questions about their future plans. Marriage is a sacred commitment, he reminded them. Not to be entered into lightly. We understand that, Reverend, Ethan assured him. We may not have known each other long, but we're certain about our decision. The minister nodded, turning his attention to Zara. And you, Miss Novak, are you entering this marriage freely without reservation? I am, she replied, surprised by the certainty in her voice. What had begun as a practical arrangement had become something she truly wanted. After the Reverend departed, promising to return on Saturday for the ceremony, Ethan suggested a ride to show Zara more of the ranch property. They saddled 2 horses, Ethan choosing a gentle mare for Zara that wouldn't jostle her too much in her condition. They rode at an easy pace, Ethan pointing out landmarks and boundaries as they went. He showed her the creek that provided water for the cattle, the meadow where the best grass grew, the distant mountains that marked the edge of Andrew's land. It's beautiful, Zara said as they paused atop a small hill, looking out over the vast expanse. I never imagined living somewhere so open, so wild. Do you miss the city? Ethan asked. She considered the question. I miss certain conveniences, the shops, the theater occasionally, but there's a peace here I never found in Helena. She glanced at him. And better company. Ethan smiled, the expression lighting his entire face. I'm glad you think so. I worried you might find ranch life too isolated. I've been lonely in crowded places, Zara told him. Being surrounded by people doesn't prevent loneliness if there's no one who truly cares for you. I care for you, Ethan said quietly. More each day. The simple declaration warmed her. I care for you too. They rode on, coming eventually to a small cabin nestled in a grove of trees about a mile from the main house. It was simple but well built, with a porch across the front and smoke rising from the chimney. This was the original homestead, Ethan explained as they dismounted. My father built it when he first claimed the land. Thomas built the main house after he married Catherine, but we've kept this place maintained. Sometimes the ranch hands use it during calving season when they need to be away from the bunkhouse. He led her inside, where a single large room served as living area, kitchen, and bedroom combined. A fire burned low in the stone fireplace, likely lit by one of the hands earlier in the day. Despite its simplicity, the cabin had a cozy, welcoming feel. It's lovely, Zara said, running her hand along the smooth wooden table. So peaceful. I thought we might stay here after the wedding, Ethan suggested, watching her reaction carefully. Just for a few days. It would give us some privacy, a chance to adjust to being husband and wife without Mrs. Whittaker and the hands right there. The thought of being alone with Ethan, away from prying eyes, both excited and nervous Zara. This would be their honeymoon, the beginning of their life together as a married couple. I'd like that, she said softly. Ethan moved closer, his eyes never leaving her face. Zara, he said, his voice low. I want to kiss you. May I? Her heart raced at his request. They hadn't shared any physical affection beyond holding hands, and suddenly she wanted nothing more than to know what his kiss would feel like. Yes, she whispered. Ethan stepped forward, gently cupping her face in his hands. He leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that started soft and questioning but quickly deepened as she responded. His arms slid around her waist, drawing her closer, while her hands moved to his shoulders, steadying herself against the flood of sensations. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. I've been wanting to do that since the first week you were here, he admitted. Zara smiled, feeling a newfound confidence. I'm glad you finally did. He kissed her again, more briefly this time before stepping back. We should head back. Mrs. Whittaker will be wondering where we are. As they rode home, Zara found herself looking forward to their wedding with an anticipation that had nothing to do with security or practicality. In just 2 days, she would become Mrs. Ethan Andrews, and for the first time, the thought filled her with joy rather than anxiety. The wedding day dawned clear and mild, a perfect spring morning. Mrs. Whittaker had transformed the parlor with wildflowers gathered from the meadows, their bright colors bringing cheer to the formal room. A small group had gathered the ranch hands, Reverend Parker, and a few neighboring ranchers who had known Ethan for years. Notably absent were Margaret and Clara Wilson, who had declined the invitation with a terse note citing a prior commitment. Upstairs, Mrs. Whittaker helped Zara dress in a simple cream-colored gown they had altered from one of Catherine's dresses. The style, with its high waist and flowing skirt, effectively disguised Zara's slightly rounded belly. "You look beautiful," the housekeeper said, securing a sprig of wildflowers in Zara's upswept hair. "Ethan won't be able to take his eyes off you." "I'm nervous," Zara admitted. "What if I'm not the wife he needs?" Mrs. Whittaker patted her hand. "You're exactly what he needs, my dear. I've seen how he looks at you. That man is already half in love with you, whether he realizes it or not." Before Zara could respond to this surprising statement, a knock at the door signaled it was time. Samuel, the ranch foreman, had offered to escort her downstairs in the absence of any family. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. Standing before Reverend Parker, Zara and Ethan exchanged vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish one another for the rest of their lives. As Ethan slid a simple gold band onto her finger, his mother's, he had told her Zara felt a sense of rightness settle over her. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. The small gathering applauded, and Mrs. Whittaker dabbed at her own tears with a handkerchief. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. Mrs. Whittaker had prepared a feast, and the ranch hands had brought out a fiddle and harmonica for dancing. As the new Mrs. Andrews, Zara found herself the center of attention, accepting congratulations and good wishes from people who just weeks ago had been strangers. Throughout the afternoon, Ethan remained close by her side, his hand often finding hers or resting lightly against her back. The warmth of his touch and the pride in his eyes when he introduced her as "my wife" made Zara's heart swell with emotions she wasn't quite ready to name. As evening approached, they said their goodbyes and prepared to ride to the cabin. Mrs. Whittaker had packed food for several days, and the ranch hands promised to manage things in their absence. "Be happy," the housekeeper whispered as she hugged Zara goodbye. "You both deserve it." The ride to the cabin was quiet, both lost in thoughts of the day and what lay ahead. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Ethan helped Zara down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home, Mrs. Andrews," he said softly. Inside, the cabin had been transformed. Fresh linens covered the bed, candles were lit on the table and mantel, and a fire burned cheerfully in the fireplace. Someone, likely Mrs. Whittaker, had placed a vase of wildflowers on the table beside a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "It's perfect," Zara breathed, taking in the romantic scene. Ethan moved to the fireplace, adding another log to ensure the fire would last through the night. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Mrs. Whittaker packed enough food for a small army. "A little," she admitted, though her stomach was fluttering with nerves rather than hunger. They shared a simple meal at the table, the conversation easier than Zara had expected. Ethan told stories about his first cattle drive, making her laugh with tales of his youthful mistakes. She countered with anecdotes from her days as a seamstress, including the time she accidentally sewed a prominent banker's wife into her dress. As they finished the wine, a comfortable silence fell between them. Ethan reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Are you happy, Zara?" he asked quietly. She met his gaze, seeing the genuine concern there. "Yes," she answered honestly. Happier than I've been in a very long time. Relief softened his features. Good, that's all I want for you to be happy here with me, and you, she asked. Are you happy with your choice of bride? His smile was slow and warm. More than I can say. He stood, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, then more insistent as she responded, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Zara, he said, his voice rough with emotion, I meant what I said before. We don't have to rush anything. If you're not ready, she silenced him with another kiss. I'm ready, she whispered against his lips. I want to be your wife in every way. The tenderness with which Ethan loved her that night brought tears to Zara's eyes. He was gentle, mindful of her condition, putting her comfort and pleasure before his own. In his arms, she found not just physical satisfaction but a deeper connection that transcended the physical. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Ethan's hand rested protectively over the slight swell of her abdomen. Our child, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. From this day forward, this is our child. Zara covered his hand with her own, overwhelmed by his acceptance, his generosity of spirit. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For finding me in the barn that day, for knowing my secret and not turning me away, for giving us a home, a future. Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, his face serious in the firelight. Zara, when I found you that morning, something changed for me. The ranch had felt empty since Thomas and Catherine died, just a place of work, not a home. But seeing you there, so brave despite your fear, it woke something in me that I thought had died with them. His honesty moved her deeply. I was so afraid, she admitted. Not just of being discovered, but of what would become of us, me and the baby. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. You have me now, he promised. Always. The days they spent at the cabin were a time out of time, a chance to learn each other without the distractions of ranch life. They explored the surrounding woods, sat for hours by the creek talking, and shared the simple domestic tasks of cooking and keeping the cabin in order. At night, they discovered each other's bodies, their lovemaking growing more confident, more passionate, as they learned what brought the other pleasure. Zara found herself responding to Ethan's touch with an enthusiasm that sometimes surprised them both, her previous fears and hesitations forgotten in the safety of his embrace. On their final night at the cabin, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Ethan took her hand. I have something to tell you, he said. Something I should have said before now. Zara felt a momentary flutter of anxiety. What is it? I love you. The words were simple, direct, like the man himself. I think I started falling in love with you that first day in the barn. I definitely knew it by the time I proposed, but I was afraid to say it, afraid you wouldn't believe me or that you'd think I was just saying it to convince you to marry me. Joy bloomed in Zara's chest, so intense it took her breath away. Ethan, she whispered, I love you too. I've been so afraid to admit it, even to myself. It seemed too fast, too convenient. But real all the same, he finished for her. Yes, she agreed. Very real. Their return to the main house the next day marked the beginning of their life together as husband and wife. Mrs. Whitaker welcomed them with a special dinner, and the ranch hands treated Zara with a new level of respect as the official mistress of Andrew's ranch. Spring gave way to summer, and Zara's pregnancy became more pronounced. Ethan insisted she rest when needed, often finding her in the afternoons on the porch swing with a book or sewing basket. He would sit beside her, his hand resting on her growing belly, marveling at the movements of the child within. News of their marriage and Zara's condition had spread through the neighboring ranches, leading to some raised eyebrows and whispered speculation about the timing. But Ethan's standing in the community and his obvious devotion to his new wife silenced most critics. Those who dared to comment directly were met with Ethan's cold stare and the firm statement that he couldn't be more pleased about becoming a father. As her due date approached, Zara found herself both excited and apprehensive. The nearest doctor was in town, a full day's ride away. Mrs. Whitaker assured her that she had assisted at many births and that everything would be fine, but Zara couldn't help worrying. One evening in early October, as they sat on the porch enjoying the cool autumn air, Zara felt the first sharp pain. She gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. Ethan was instantly alert. "What is it? Is it time?" "I think so," she said, breathing through the discomfort, "but it could be hours yet." He helped her inside, calling for Mrs. Whitaker, who took charge with calm efficiency. The housekeeper sent one of the ranch hands for the midwife who lived on a neighboring property, while Ethan carried Zara upstairs to their bedroom. The labor progressed more quickly than anyone expected. By midnight, Zara was in the throes of active labor, clutching Ethan's hand through each contraction. He refused to leave her side, despite Mrs. Whitaker's insistence that men usually waited elsewhere during childbirth. "I'm staying with my wife," he said firmly. His presence was Zara's anchor as the pain intensified. He wiped her brow, spoke encouragements in her ear, and supported her back when she needed to change positions. When she cried out that she couldn't do it anymore, his voice was steady in her ear. "You can," he assured her. "You're the strongest woman I know, Zara Andrews. Our child is coming and you're bringing him into the world." Just before dawn, with one final, exhausting push, their son was born. Mrs. Whitaker cleaned the squalling infant and placed him in Zara's arms, his tiny face red with the effort of his first cries. "He's perfect," Zara whispered, tears streaming down her face as she counted fingers and toes. Ethan sat beside her on the bed, his own eyes wet as he gazed at his son. "Hello, little one," he said, touching the baby's cheek with a gentle finger. "Welcome to the world." They named him Thomas Ethan Andrews after Ethan's brother and himself. As Zara watched Ethan hold their son for the first time, his large hands cradling the tiny bundle with infinite care, she felt a love so profound, it seemed to fill every corner of her being. This was her family, the husband who had found her in his barn carrying her shameful secret, and had instead seen someone worth loving. And the child who would grow up never doubting he was wanted and cherished. News of young Thomas's birth spread quickly. Neighbors came calling to offer congratulations and gifts for the baby. Even Margaret Wilson made an appearance, her curiosity overcoming her disapproval as she cooed over the infant and commented on his strong resemblance to Ethan, a tactful fiction that both Zara and Ethan appreciated. As autumn deepened into winter, the Andrews household settled into a new routine centered around baby Thomas. Ethan proved to be an attentive father, often taking the baby from Zara when he returned from his work so she could rest. She would find them in the study, Ethan reading aloud from books or ranch ledgers while Thomas slept contentedly against his broad chest. On Christmas Eve, their first as a family, a light snow fell over the ranch. After dinner, they sat before the fire in the parlor, Thomas asleep in a cradle that Ethan had crafted himself. Mrs. Whitaker had retired early, leaving them alone to enjoy the peaceful evening. "I have something for you," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Zara unwrapped it carefully to find a delicate gold locket. Opening it, she discovered a tiny portrait of Thomas on one side and Ethan on the other. "Oh, Ethan," she breathed. "It's beautiful." "I had it made in town last week," he explained, helping her fasten it around her neck, "so you'll always have us close to your heart." "As if you could ever be anywhere else," she said, leaning up to kiss him. "You and Thomas are my heart." Ethan pulled her into his arms, his expression serious. "This past year has been the most unexpected, most wonderful year of my life. When I found you in that barn, I had no idea you would change everything." "For me too," Zara said softly. "I was so afraid that morning, certain you would turn me away. Instead, you gave me a home, a family, a love I never thought I would find." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Inside, by the warmth of the fire, Ethan and Zara Andrews held each other close, their sleeping son near by, a family created not by blood but by choice, by acceptance, by love. And as the years passed, the story of how they met became a favorite tale in the Andrews household. How she hid in the barn carrying her secret, how the cowboy found her and said, "I already knew." How from that unlikely beginning grew a love strong enough to weather any storm, to build a legacy that would endure for generations to come on the land they both cherished. For Zara Novak Andrews, the young woman who had once been so alone and afraid, life had become richer and more beautiful than she had ever dared to dream. And each night, as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, she thanked the twist of fate that had led her to his barn on that stormy Montana night, to the place and the man she would forever call home.